in my career. And I think that I've always had a very deliberate career path for myself in terms of what I wanted to achieve. But I have quite a creative side to me that I couldn't really, I made a very conscious decision early on in my career that I wasn't going to pursue at that time fashion design, because I thought that I was probably better suited for the business world. And many years ago, I decided that I would kind of stick to the business side of things, and naively thought that you couldn't be creative in a business context. And I think that over a period of time, what I started realizing was that I always had these positions in my career, and I continuously started these side hustles and businesses that were either related to fashion or concept stores in terms of retail, and was really solving a need that was something that I wanted to see in my world but wasn't able to access. And eventually, when it came to KushKush, I think that was honestly something that was this beautiful culmination of so many different interests, because I had, it was just off the back of the 2018 kind of ruling that made it legal to grow your own cannabis. And honestly, I mean, I was, a recreational user kind of as a young, in my early 20s, but it wasn't a sincere kind of business interest of mine. And I kind of stumbled across it because I was interested to see, what does this really mean for us as a country? What does it mean for people? What is the economic opportunity? And I went with my boyfriend actually to a head shop here in Cape Town. And because I come from a luxury retail background, that's kind of always the lens that I look at retail stores through. And I was standing in the store and just realized that this is definitely not a consumer-friendly experience. And I was standing there, it was absolutely packed. The guy behind the counter was spinning off of his head. He had such beautiful, expensive items in that store, and it just looked terrible. And as I stood there, I realized that from my perspective as a woman, kind of looking at this stock, it doesn't feel inviting. It doesn't feel like I can ask questions. I was, to be perfectly honest, quite intimidated by the whole experience, and left there thinking that, surely if that is my experience, it's possibly the same for other women. And that's kind of how I started going down this rabbit hole of really looking for what is happening in developed markets like the US, like Canada, and what is happening there. And initially, it wasn't really with the eye of starting a business. It was just more out of curiosity, more than anything else. And I got so sucked into this and came across the most amazing women in the States and in Canada who were really holding the space within the cannabis industry and were doing the most phenomenal creative things. And it just really sparked an interest for me, because you had this beautiful creativity coming through, a really exceptional example of women empowerment in a really left field industry. And I just thought that this is something that I could really get stuck into, and kind of snowballed from there. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, I won't lie.
But how do you, I think many of us listening are wondering, how do you find the time? You have a fairly large and important job already, but you have this like consuming side hustle. How do you make it all fit in?
So, I mean, there's a few things, but predominantly I use my free time. I wake up really early and I go to bed really late. So I have quite a structured day in terms of that. So, you know, between 5 and 7 in the morning, I can get quite a bit done. And in the evenings, after my kids have gone to bed, like between 8 and 11, I can get quite a bit done. So there's a lot of kind of time that I carve out in the mornings and in the evenings. And then on the weekends as well, there is some time to kind of get that done. But I would say that the secret to keeping the wheels going is to surround yourself with a support system that makes us work. I have, previously with side hustles, I absolutely worked myself into the ground. And that's because I was so stubborn that I didn't actually allow other people to do anything. And I think if that's one thing that I've really learned, is that you have to let go and you have to actually construct your side hustle and treat it like a proper business and not just a pet project. And when I was setting up KushKush, I knew that things like fulfillment of orders, it takes up a lot of time. Back and forth with those customers takes up a lot of time. Accounting takes up a lot of time. So all of those things that I knew was going to be time consuming during normal business hours, I found partners that I can outsource that to. And that has honestly been an absolute game changer for me. I do still struggle with delegating, but I think that you know, finding the people that can help keep those wheels moving is really important. And also from like a content perspective, you know, KushKush is, because of the rules around cannabis, and you actually can't use traditional marketing methods. You have to create, you know, really meaningful content. Like, you have to work really hard to build that community. And I think that takes up a lot of time. So I've got a lot of kind of support around creating that content as well. So
that's really good advice. Sina, I saw you nodding your head when talking about support structures. And how have you found being on your own effectively? I mean, you're at the head of the company and running your own business. How have you found that in terms of pressures on your time and your own life, and how do you stay sane? And I'm assuming you are sane and coping. It looks like it. How do you find, you know, kind of like calmness and energy to perform?
I think I'm lucky that my business is not something completely detached from the type of person that I am as well. To be honest, I don't have a life. My life is Yococo. And I've just had to merge everything there. Friends, okay, they're not really friends first, they're teammates first and friends later. But that's how I've done it. I've surrounded myself with things that I'd want in my life anyway, through the business. And yeah, it's very important to know that you can't do everything yourself. And also, just, I think it's the biggest lesson is I actually noticed that I struggle to ask for help until I'm like drowning. And then someone would be like, you drowning? It's like, okay, yes, you can help. But there's no way that you can succeed alone and without delegating and actually trusting people to do things the way that you would do them as well. Yeah, I think that's how I've stayed sane. And also just keeping my, like, just, yeah, I try to keep the environment very zen so that when we stressed, it's not because of our own stuff, it's things that we actually have in front of us that we can fix. So yeah, and just really teamwork really does make the dream work. So yeah.
Nkgabiseng, and you, from running your business, what are some of your tips and advice in terms of standing strong and carrying on?
I think I also, I'd like to echo what you're saying, Sine, which is around teamwork. I honestly learned the importance of not being a one-man show over the last 4 years of running the company. In order to protect what your output is like, in order to consistently have excellent results, you cannot be juggling too many things because you're definitely going to drop a ball at some point. So selecting the team with trust in mind so that when it's time to hand over a task or a relationship, even sometimes, you trust that person will do it justice. And then really like living what you promise when you say to them, I trust you. And trusting them in moments when you need to be focusing on other things. That for me has become so critical. And it's a very tough lesson to learn, especially if you found the business doing everything yourself in the beginning. So that when you have to bring on other people, you have done the tasks that they've done, not to micromanage them, not to expect it to be exactly the way you would approach it, and allowing people space to bring on a different value to the business, getting what you need done, but slightly differently. So for me, that's been like incredibly important. Also just understanding like this business needs discipline. A lot of the time I talk to like people who are wanting to start their businesses, and a lot of the questions to me sound like they're steeped in glamour and I guess like this very fancy idea of entrepreneurship that we can thank Silicon Valley for, which I have found doesn't exist. Like you need to be disciplined, you need grit, you need all of those hours, like Joe said, doing stuff like fulfillment, which there is absolutely no glamour in, but every single sale, every single customer's experience makes up how people view your business. So very quickly realizing that it's not a glamorous game, it's literally busyness. What are you going to be busy doing every single day? And if you love that thing, then it becomes less stressful, but realistically, it's putting in a lot of hard work and grit as well.
Do you think that the love for it is enough motivation to keep on? And this
No.
is a question.
No.
How do you stay motivated, especially when there's like bumps in the road or?
Yeah, I mean, I like to use the analogy of a romantic relationship, because even if you love the other person, it doesn't mean that that is the key ingredient that will get you through absolutely every peak and trough. So you've got to have systems in place, that'll allow you to take out the willpower aspect of, your likelihood of doing a task. So relying on I will feel like doing it because you feel like doing it in a certain positive moment or after a successful moment hasn't worked for me personally. I have to kind of willpower engineer every single moment. So what I'll do for myself typically is, because I know jobs become tiring and sometimes you lose zeal and sometimes you lose energy for them, I will include other people. Let's say I have to have a meeting with a supplier that I don't really feel like is super stimulating, but obviously it's important for the business. Then I'll include someone else in that meeting to ensure that I don't push that out, for example, which is a tiny example, but it allows us to keep going.
Excellent.
Yeah, because it kind of gives you an accountability partner. And I think that stuff like that works better than hoping that the love you have for the thing will be consistent every single day. Of course, on an overarching way, I love what I do, but like, do I love it every single morning when I'm exhausted, when I'm fluey, when, I've been working on the same task, when the client is being mean? Absolutely not. So I need other things that are just very systematic, that are there to ensure I will behave the way I need to behave in that moment.
Joe, Sine, what motivates you and what helps you on?
I think really defining for myself where we're going and breaking it down into small tasks that I can manage to get through has really helped me to not back out, because to be honest, this is the longest job I've ever had. Like I normally don't last more than 3 months in a job. And yeah, like I think that's what really keeps me going, because I don't know, this job, I don't feel I need motivation because it's become so much of my life. It's what I do. Like I can't personally, I don't wake up in the morning ever thinking, I still have to do this thing. I think it's become such a habit for me that it's part of what I do now, which is a bit scary actually, to think one day if
No, it's wonderful. Enjoy it.
I'm just thinking, who will I be?
Just go with it. But I would also, I mean, you wouldn't feel like that when they make ice cream.
True.
It's a very important job.
Very important job. It's never neglected. Joe, what about you? What keeps you motivated?
For me, the thing that keeps me motivated is to remember why I'm doing this. And I agree with Nkgabiseng that it's definitely not glamorous at 5 o'clock in the morning when you are packing orders to go out or whatever the story is. And, you know, but what keeps me motivated is to remember, like, we get a lot of feedback from our community that say, finally, like, we can ask these questions, we can, you know, find an outlet for our questions and not feel judged. And that to me makes a massive difference. I think we were, like, from my perspective, sustainability is a big theme in our business, and how do you create kind of a sustainable cannabis industry, and not just limited to e-commerce, which is where we really play. And I'd like to think that KushKush plays a part in creating the narrative or an environment where people can learn about it and can hopefully be inspired by what is possible within this industry. And I think that is what drives me every day, is to hope that somebody will wake up, see a post about, you know, whether it's kind of treating a medical condition, whether it's not being judged for smoking a joint instead of having a glass of wine, you know, at a party or whatever the story is, or whether it's sparking the conversation around what does it mean to have a sustainable cannabis industry in this country, and how do you kind of form that conversation to make sure that people that have been doing this for literally hundreds of years are included in this conversation and in the commerce of it going forward. And I think that, you know, there are so many women in particular that have been growing cannabis to feed their children, to send them to school, that are not part of this kind of conversation. But I'd like to think that we are creating a space to at least spark that conversation so that people are aware of it. And I think that the purpose of KushKush is what keeps me going more than anything else.
Yeah. I want for a moment to jump to finding your plan B. I think there might be some of us listening, and I think just as we said earlier, in South Africa in general, lots of people are under pressure with reduced hours or retrenchments. What if you have to come up with a plan B, and that might be a side hustle because you're a little bored or not stimulated in your job, or you want to find a new job? How do you spot those kind of opportunities, and how do you hustle to make that happen?
I would say to be able to spot that opportunity is to really pay attention to what you gravitate towards. So You know, if you are kind of, what do you watch on Netflix? What do you read? What do you know, what are those things that naturally inspire you? Because I think, as we were saying earlier, it isn't glamorous every day and it does get hard. And I think if you aren't naturally inspired by that topic, it's going to be hard to keep going. So in finding your plan B, I'd really interrogate what lights that fire, you know, every day, like what really excites you, because there's something in that. So just pay attention.
Yeah. Sine, Nkgabiseng, what about you? How do you, yeah, I mean, Sine, maybe we can start with you. How did you decide on ice cream?
It's weird because I wanted to cut out all dairy and all animal products, and ice cream was the first thing that I missed. And and then that's when I started looking for dairy-free alternatives, and I realized that, hey, there's no way I'm gonna have this. Like, so I need to make a plan. I need to change. I need to change what's on the market, and it just, the way that things happened for me, things just started falling into place. It happened to be a gap in the market as well. And that's why I say the business happened to me. I was just looking for dairy-free ice cream, and I was just looking to do something that is fulfilling and something that does have impact on other people's lives as well. And yeah, I guess it was just a meeting of me and ice cream. Yeah,
The universe provided.
definitely.
Nkgabiseng, maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about moving on in your career, or kind of spotting a new career opportunities for yourself. As we said, you've worked at a couple of agencies and then you started your own. What advice do you have for people out there that are kind of like feeling uncomfortable where they're at in their agency? How do they get out of that rut and spot a new opportunity?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think in advertising, there's a unique opportunity in that the main discipline that we practice, especially if you work in creative or strategy departments, is to problem solve. So you come across various problems all the time, whether they're by industry, whether they're product related, and you have the opportunity to come up with a solution to solve that problem. So I think for myself as well, if I were to do the exercise, I'm sitting 5 years ago and asking myself these questions, like what's wrong with the current agency model? What can be innovated? What can be disrupted? What are clients looking for? What's missing in terms of even a demographic? And then answering that question and coming up with Think Creative Africa as an offering. But I mean, we do this on a daily basis on behalf of clients and even on behalf of ourselves. So for instance, the Field Party, which is our breast cancer initiative, came similarly, coming across a problem like breast cancer information that's out there is very intimidating and medical and doesn't really speak to millennials. It's also very seasonal. So you're spoken to in October, and then it's gone again. So how can we make it daily, monthly, so that people continue to have self-examination top of mind, and it comes in a way that is more approachable, fun, you know, dare I say, because cancer is such a grim topic, but able to connect with people like ourselves, so that people can actually look at the information and not just like, you know, scroll or flip the page or whatever. So even with career progression, I would challenge someone who's looking to feel more comfortable or looking for something else in their career to look around and see, what is it that I like? What is it that I'm good at? And probably at that intersection, there will be a few problems or a few gaps that haven't been filled. And those ideas are often the best because you like the thing, you're really good at it, and other people are not looking at it the way that you're looking at it. And if you can offer a solution for that, there's so much longevity in that, because you'll be able to motivate yourself towards it. And then you'll be able to be rewarded for it, even if it's just being paid a sale, because indeed you'd be really good at it. So I would challenge everyone in your daily lives. There's so many things like that. In fact, I think we have room for people to do the same problem solving thing proactively. And a lot of the time things come out that aren't really adverts, that we will either spearhead as an initiative, or if it's in the form of a product, look at how can we introduce this to the market to spread our wings also as a creative agency. So yeah.
I'd just like to add that I think that I know we're talking about side hustles or kind of side, yeah, but I think within the context of a business, even if you are an employee at a business, I think that taking that same mindset and that same approach that Nkgabiseng was just talking about is so valuable to add to your own career progression within a business. Because I think now more than ever, businesses need people that are willing to learn, that are willing to step change, that are willing to explore different ways of doing things, because businesses that don't do that won't survive. And, you know, it's for you, even if you're not ready to make that change, to work for yourself or to build your own little side hustle or empire, like you can make a big difference within the business that you find yourself. And I think that within all this uncertainty that COVID presents and this kind of weird space that we find ourselves, there is a lot of opportunity to either kind of do quite a big leapfrog in terms of what you do in your career, or make a complete change, because people are open to it. We're all in amidst a lot of change. So I think if you take that hustler mentality, I know you guys don't like that word, but you know what I mean, into even a corporate job, I think it can really kind of make a big impact.
It does really to my next question, which is around navigating this time when you don't actually have in real life face time with other people. I feel like so often ideas or opportunities get spotted when you're with someone or you're just having a little casual chat. What tips do you have for networking and like really working your connections in this Zoom era that we're living in? Anyone?
I would say just embrace it, because the reality is that connection does not equal face-to-face time. And I mean, I think I've been even more productive during this time because, you know, you're a Teams call away, a phone call away, and I spend my life on the telephone. But it hasn't meant that I'm any less inspired, because the people that I connect to are what are the source of that inspiration. And I think don't be intimidated by the fact that, you know, you need to, or don't think that you need to sit across the way from somebody in a meeting to be able to be productive or to get the best out of them. Sure, it does make it a lot more fun when you're there in person, but I think it's more around making sure that you are kind of really, you know, deliberate in terms of who you're talking to and what you want to get out of those conversations.
Yeah,
that makes the difference.
Yeah. Have you disappeared now? Oh, no, you're back.
Was it me who had disappeared?
No, you're still there.
Oh, okay.
Sine, before we go to questions from the audience, I would like you to tell us a little bit about your new initiative to supply groceries to childhood at home. Tell us a little bit about that. It sounds so amazing what you're doing.
Okay, so we started this, I think, sometime just after they announced the lockdown. And yeah, so we have opted to take our profits and buy child-headed homes and homes with people with disabilities, groceries. Because right now, a lot of people obviously can't work. Well, at the time, a lot more people couldn't work. And I think these two groups of people that we've identified are even more vulnerable to that. And especially where I come from, my village, there's a lot of child-headed homes. And yeah, I just wanted us to serve love in that way, which is actually our mission, to serve love in school. So yeah, it's been so interesting to just see how everyone is willing to help and really contribute. Yeah.
And have you reached your target of all the scoops you wanted to?
Not yet, not yet. We are on 410 scoops, and our target is 1,000. So yeah,
So I
so
know it's winter, everyone, but please buy ice cream.
yeah. We actually have an e-commerce website now, so it's much easier. Yeah.
Cool, cool. We'll go there. I want.
Oh, you're on mute.
Oops. Have we got some questions from the audience? Let me quickly go there and see what's happening there. Lots of people saying hello. How does one stress test a business partnership before branching out?
That's a good question.
Nkgabiseng, you've
Yeah,
spoken about
sure.
your partner.
I think, like any other relationship, give it time, an opportunity for you to connect and work together in ways where the stakes aren't totally the highest is great. So can you work on a project together? Can you isolate the working environment a bit and grow the kind of circle of trust as you go? If you a lot of people say to me, but I don't have time to do that. I want to do this now. But I would encourage you to really force yourself to do it. So even if you want to pilot a business idea, for example, maybe pilot it as a joint venture at first, see how you work together, and then take on that next step to go, okay, we are now business partners and this is the split. I would also iron out a lot of the detail up front. This is advice that I got from a business mentor in the beginning. They said the most important thing in a business relationship is a contract, and not to sound kind of ruthless, but the way that contracts work is that they protect you for the worst case scenario. And you absolutely need that. It's kind of like an insurance blanket, and it allows you to operate so much more freely when you are running the business day to day, because there is this agreement in place. So that time to pilot the working relationship, as well as in that same time outline what you both want out of a contract, out of the formalities of the partnership, I think goes a long way. We've been approached a number of times by whether it's larger companies, venture caps, other agencies, to say, how can we do business with you? And we always have the same answer: is there a way we can pilot the relationship? So, whether we're doing one campaign together to see how that plays out, or we're gonna collaboratively pitch on a piece of work, at least there's something, a step in the way of seeing how this person is, how they operate, because typically you cannot change someone who's been working the way they've been working for 35 years, 45 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be. And those problems can be insurmountable in a business. So I would say try and have a dating period, an engagement period, and then and then tie the knot, because it's super important to see whether the relationship organically works before you make that decision.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Then there's a comment. Someone says, I think many women feel like asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's a difficult barrier to break through, but with time. Any comments? It's difficult to allow someone else in on something that you're so passionate about. It's scary as they might not see it as important as you do. Thanks, great.
But I do think that you can find people that are as passionate as you are about a certain topic. And I think that should absolutely be like at the top of your list. I remember with KushKush, we asked people to write articles about cannabis, and it came out that they actually, they were very good journalists, but they weren't truly passionate about the topic, and it absolutely showed. And you eventually learn to kind of, figure out if it is truly a passion or not. But I think you can, if you really prioritize that kind of as a filter, you can find people that are as passionate about what you do, even though they're not a business partner or necessarily an employee. Like our suppliers are so passionate about what we're building, and they're not even kind of shareholders or whatever the story is, and it makes all the difference.
Can I just I think also sometimes it's not really the topic or what the core business is. Sometimes you find people who are passionate about other parts of what you do, and maybe, for example, somebody who's really good at maybe being a driver, that's what they're passionate about, and that just happens to be a part of your business. So you don't have to find people who are passionate about ice cream, for example, for them to make good team members. Yeah.
Then we have a question from Marsha, who says, what tips do you ladies have for gaining the capital for your respective ventures?
Sorry, please can you repeat the end of that question? I didn't hear. For gaining, was it gaining capital?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say that if there's a way to bootstrap it, that you should absolutely do that first, and slowly catch a monkey is always the best approach, I think, to, if you don't have to rely on external capital, then try like a test case first and see if it will work. But if you do need investment to really get something meaningful off the ground, I think the advice that Nkgabiseng gave earlier about choosing your business partners is very similar to choosing people that you enter into financial kind of agreements with. And whether that is a financial institution or somebody who's offering seed funding, it's the same thing, because essentially you're answerable to those people. And it adds a lot of pressure, especially when you're building a business, if you have to answer to people that aren't on the same page as you. Yeah. So you really need to think about it carefully about where you're getting that funding. And it sounds really amazing to be able to get somebody to commit, a significant amount of money so that you can build this business. But it comes with its own fair share of responsibility. And when you are building a business like that, you have a lot of responsibility already. So if you can bootstrap it, I would say do it. But if you can't, then friends and family are normally the first port of call. It just depends on how much capital you need to raise.
Anyone else on that?
I think also not starting your business at the end, because sometimes you have these big dreams of what your business ideally should be like, and when you look at it, you just think you're going to need so much money. But as Joe said, starting bit by bit usually really helps. And not all businesses really need capital to start, but to grow. So I think just assessing your business in that way, that can you really start small and build from there, and not rushing the end product.
Yeah, that's good
And
advice.
ask questions. I mean, I think a lot of people assume that to be able to start a business, you need to have, a lot of money to get going. But there's so many different ways to skin that cat. You can kind of, find different ways of keeping those wheels moving. But a lot of times we don't ask because we don't want to sound silly or uninformed. And I found the more I spoke to people about how to be able to achieve something, I got the greatest advice. And, don't be scared to put it out there about what you're wanting to build. And, people are generally very generous with advice and experience. And so, but also be careful with, who you surround yourself with. I think it's really important to make sure that you surround yourself with people that you trust and that have a proven track record. So don't take advice from just anybody.
Yeah. Then there's a question, have you ever hit a slump or a personal crisis, and how did you get back on track? That's for any of you.
Sure. I mean, I would say not so much a personal crisis, but like a number of slumps along the way that you just have to tackle. I think the biggest thing is just taking a break rather than quitting. Like, it's really invaluable, because a lot of the time when we feel overwhelmed, we feel like we'll never, be able to surmount whatever the mountain of work is that we have before us. But with a break in perspective, you come back and feel like the issue that was once a mountain to you is now a molehill. So I honestly cannot stress enough the value of that. And I also had to learn it from family and friends, because I didn't take naturally to breaks because I felt like that meant I was slacking. But honestly, when I've had a good break, I come back and I look at the problem with new eyes. I can typically solve it so much sooner with a lot more energy. And if you are in personal crisis, I would say don't be afraid to ask for help from professionals. A lot of the time when we are in scenarios where the crisis is mental wellness, or it's kind of intangible, then we don't go to professionals. Whereas when you have a cut, you definitely first go to a hospital and have that sorted out for you. So I would look at crises of mind or spiritual, or in your personal life the same way, whether it's a professional coach for your career if you feel like you're hitting a career slump. I did that for a number of months at the beginning of 2020, not because of a slump, but because I felt I needed someone else's perspective. Like, how do I grow into my new position in the business? Because as the business changes, it needs a new leader. And how do I keep responding to that challenge? I also am a big believer in therapy. I wasn't before, but I think in personal crises, you do need someone else with another perspective, with theoretical knowledge to help you along through that scenario, especially if you're an entrepreneur or a leader in an organization. You do need someone that you can rely on. So many entrepreneurs are in groups with other entrepreneurs where they can just discuss personal crises and issues and things that they face in business and in their personal lives. And many others are in therapy. So I think using professional tools where you feel like you can no longer just solve it with rest is honestly invaluable and absolutely nothing to be ashamed of.
I had an interesting situation where it was actually my side hustle that created personal crisis, where a few years ago I owned a retail store and in Johannesburg, and we were robbed numerous times, kind of over and over again, and eventually caused the business to fail. And it was the most devastating kind of process for me, because number one, you know, from a financial perspective, I tied myself in or invested so heavily in that business that it really landed me in kind of personal financial crisis. But also just from a self-esteem perspective, I was so tied into what I do that, you know, as opposed to who I am as an individual, that it took me a really long time to get over that and even entertain the idea of thinking about starting another business. And I think that, you know, the process of accepting the fact that it's very likely that you will fail at something at some point is really important. And I think that you must, if you want to start a side hustle and or really make a go of your own business, you really have to confront that fact that it could happen, and if it does, what are you going to do? And I think that the process of really going through that was extremely painful, but very valuable. And I think that that really helped kind of open my eyes to what I need to be aware of before I kind of went down the road of starting KushKush again. And I think, you know, one of the exercises that I still do today is think about what is the absolute worst thing that can happen. Like if there's something that has happened to you, whether it's in your personal life or in your professional life, like what is the absolute worst case scenario, and do what you do best and solve that problem, even if it's only in your head. And think about what you'll do to work around that. And that has been really useful for me to kind of try and navigate around those like crises moments.
Yeah. As last question, we've also reached the end of our time, but I think this question from Cassidy is quite a nice point at which to end this evening. What advice do you have for people wanting to become an entrepreneur? So just kind of general and in summary advice for someone wanting to start their own business.
Sorry, Joe.
No, you go.
I would say don't quit your main hustle before your side hustle forces you to. And I think, of course, doing your research before you jump into it and fully commit, because sometimes you might like the thing, but then you're probably the only person who likes it. So yeah, I think doing your research and not fully committing immediately would be my advice. Yeah.
Joe?
I would say kind of off the back of that, don't fully commit, but, you know, don't just quit your job before you might not ever need to quit your job. You know, this could be a creative outlet for you. It could be something that really, you know, fulfills something within you that you need to keep yourself well-rounded and informed and excited about life in general. But I would say that if you want to do it, just start doing something, because so many people sit with these wonderful ideas in their heads and they think that they need to have it all figured out before they start doing anything, and they just basically suffer from analysis paralysis. And if you think that there is a relatively low risk way of starting it, then just do it, and, you know, do something small every day to move yourself forward, no matter how big or small that step is. And pretty soon you're going to start seeing some momentum and, you know, figuring out whether this is something that you really want to do or not. But just thinking about it isn't going to get you any further to that decision. So just do it.
Let's do it. Nkgabiseng?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ladies have really covered it, but one more thing from me would be to just start with what you have. A lot of the time we look for capital, we look for an investor, we look for a partner, we look for this, we look for that. And these can be ways that we, give ourselves barriers and maybe even excuses not to do it. So just start with what you have. If all you have is a phone, then start your business on mobile. If you have a laptop, then start your business online. Whatever it is, start with what you have. I think it's really powerful. And it allows you to find interesting solutions. So you'll find that the uniqueness of your business comes from a shortcoming sometimes. So if you're going to start a WhatsApp boutique, maybe you're South Africa's largest WhatsApp retailer. That becomes part of the thing that makes you unique and wonderful, which started out of necessity.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. That was
Thank you so much.
inspiring. Thank you for your time and your insight. We've in the chat, we've pasted the URLs to your websites. So please go by.
Thank you, guys.
And ice cream and
Ads.
buy some tea ads. Some free change in my pocket. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
This was lovely. Thank
Cheers.
you, ladies.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Bye.